This has definitely been a year like no other. We did not expect the school year to end the way it did. However, we rolled with the punches and made sure our students still got what they needed and got to the schools they needed. So my role primarily is to guide the eighth graders through the entire high school application process, and then also support them through ninth grade and make sure that they have a smooth transition to school and that the year goes well. So I spent a lot of the time at the end of last year really just finalizing high school plans. Thankfully, by March, we had already received most of the acceptances for students. So it was just about deciding what was the best fit, what tuition would look like, finalizing financial aid documents, things like that, and meeting with parents. So a lot of that, of course, became virtual, a lot of repeated phone calls and trying to get things scanned to email or taking photographs of documents. So that definitely slowed down the process in that way. But schools were also flexible with their requirements and their deadlines. A lot of things got extended, so parents could just submit things when they were able to and not necessarily usually by the April deadlines. A big thing that was, I guess, a success for us was that students still, got into the schools that we wanted. This past year's graduating class was our largest so far, but also our most diverse in high school acceptances. They've gone into schools all over the city and mostly really focused on best fit for them. I saw someone had highlighted even one of our students who's a passionate drummer. He's now at a school that he's focusing on music. Like I really am glad that this class was able to focus on things that they really are individually interested in and not necessarily going for, the top names in the city. Something, of course, that was a big challenge in that vein also was that there were many schools to make contact with, many parents to get in contact with our own school building being closed, trying to get records and all types of things that we have at the school. It was a little difficult at first, but we figured it out as the months went by. And I'll say the biggest challenge right now as the school year has started, of course, with virtual learning is that it does not work well for every student. A lot of students really thrive off being in the classroom around other students, having that really structured environment, whereas home, they really kind of became really lax. So their grades, of course, slipped at the end of the year. And they're now getting back into school mode, but also taking away the eighth grade brain and thinking about high school. So I tried to do a couple of sessions over the summer to really catch them up and talk about, your high school self and what you're gonna start off high school with and starting off strong and making sure that they can do everything they need to succeed. So that's kind of what's happening right now. I've been checking in with most of the ninth graders this past 2 weeks, and I'll say that overall they're doing well. There are some students who already have some concerns with virtual attendance or engagement, which is probably difficult for a typical 14-year-old to be engaged on Zoom. So I just want to make sure I stay in contact with them and do all that we can to support them. A lot of things we also did last year was making sure that every student had a computer at home, had Wi-Fi. We're trying to think of ways that we can offer space for them to do their work if home is not the best place. So we're just trying to pretty much adjust to the times and figure out what we can do for students right now and making sure that they are getting everything they need.
Thanks so much, Mandisa, for that great sharing and all the work that you do with our graduates. I want to talk about this program, the Pennsylvania Tax Credit Program. It's really how St. James is able to provide so many scholarships for our students. And during COVID-19, this allowed us to sort of weather this pandemic and all the sort of financial insecurities of this school year. So something about St. James, hopefully you know about our school, but actually this is our 10th school year that we're celebrating. And we started off as one class of fifth graders, and we've expanded and grown to serving students in 4th through 8th grades now. And this year we anticipate serving at full capacity with 87 students. And Mandisa works with a range of graduates, but this year we have actually 87 graduates. So we have as many graduates as we serve as actual student body. We have a unique model in that we're trying to care for the whole child so that they're thriving in school and in life. So we have an extended day, year, month model, and we have an on-site wellness center that's staffed by a nurse practitioner and a trauma-informed therapist. They have access to healthy lunches that are served daily. And like what Mandisa is doing, we also make a lifetime commitment to every student that we serve. So that's why we have this unique graduate support program that's preparing them not only for high school, but college. We have a number of graduates entering university this year, and some already in career pathways. So I want to share a little bit about one of our students and, who do they look like and where are they coming from. So this is Samaj. He is a current 6th grader. He's actually one of the members of our inaugural 4th grade class. So he is now in House Industrial, which is known for their diligence and their hardworking skills. He is a big brother to another student named Charlie, who's a 5th grader. He last year was able to engage in other enrichment activities, including playing trumpet through our partner, Tune Up Philly, and he's also a member of the Boys Club. He's also a school leader. He's been nominated as Student of the Week a number of times, and he's often seen reading during Mass. And he just lives a few blocks away from St. James School. Down the street from us is actually a public school, and this is called Rhodes. This is where many of our students are coming from or would have to attend if St. James didn't exist. And unfortunately, Rhodes and many other public schools in the area are on what they call the worst performing list because they aren't able to help as many students as they're able to. So what the tax credit program allows is for someone like Samaj to attend a school like St. James and get a scholarship for his schooling because the school that he would have to go to is on the worst performing list, and because his family makes under $30,000 a year. So what you can do is redirect your state taxes so that it could provide his scholarship and many of the other students. So how does this work? So let's take someone named Sally who loves St. James and wants to support the school, and she has annual tax liability of $6,000 a year. Oops, sorry. So she, as an individual, would join a group of other individuals called a special purpose entity, and they would together redirect their state taxes and pass it on to an eligible school. So she would commit to making a donation of $6,000 to St. James School for 2 years, and that donation would be then passed on to the school. So how does this actually work? Well, by participating in this program, instead of paying the $6,000 in state taxes, because she's made this donation at tax time, she'd get a 90% tax credit. And so the remaining that she would owe to the state would be only 10%, or in this case, $600. And Tammy has shared with us that that remaining 10% can be deductible on your federal taxes. So who is eligible? Are you eligible? Essentially, it's anyone who's an employee, owner, or shareholder of a business authorized to do business in Pennsylvania. And this also includes nonprofit employees and retirees, as long as you own a stock in a business that operates in Pennsylvania. So that can include something like Verizon or Comcast, or a big company. It doesn't have to be just sort of a local business. And again, you'd be committing to the same amount for 2 years, and have a liability of at least $3,500 annually. As I mentioned, we partner with Central Pennsylvania Scholarship Fund. We'll hear a little bit from Tammy in a moment. But they not only work with us, but over 400 schools across the state, and they've distributed millions of dollars in scholarships. And by participating in this program, you're able to impact more of our students and invest in their future. So Central Pennsylvania Scholarship Fund is actually a group of accountants. They donate their time pro bono, and that allows more of your donation to come directly back to St. James. Like I said, because Central Pennsylvania is a nonprofit themselves, they're able to pass on everything to us, and they process all the paperwork for us so that we don't have to deal with all the state legislations and processes. But we know that this program is very popular, and in the past we've had a waiting list. But right now, they're accepting applications. You can sign up now. There's still credits available, and we're hoping that you might be considering how this might be something that you can do to participate and help more of our students. Some suggestions that we make is obviously that you would want to consult a financial or tax advisor to see what your situation is and what would make sense for you in terms of participating. But you would want to think about not only your liability for 2020, but also 2021, since it's a 2-year commitment. And you'd want to think about that amount that you could do for both years. Something that still is in the works, but a check would be due in October. It's an earlier deadline than in the past, but we're hoping that the state will approve these awards shortly, and that you would be able to participate soon. But stay tuned, because that date might change a little bit or be delayed because of the impacts that the state has had because of the shutdown. And then, because of your donation, you would get a K-1 form in February, which would indicate your 90% tax credit. And, if you are owed a refund, that would come the following year in the fall. And I also want to just share, quickly. This is a joinder, and this would be the agreement that you would sign to participate. And I just wanted to quickly share this because it's such a simple form. It's pretty much your basic information. I used my coworker Angie's name and fake information to fill this out. But the thing that we want to point out is that if you are considering participating, to indicate St. James School Philadelphia, because there are actually a number of other St. James schools in Pennsylvania, and so we don't want to get confused with other schools.
Sure. Thank you very much for inviting me to be on here. It's always a pleasure. I've thoroughly enjoyed working with you guys for the last few years, so I can very happy to continue this partnership that we have. My name is Tammy Clark, and I've been the executive director now for 3 years with the Central Pennsylvania Scholarship Fund. I worked originally with Randy Tarpey, who is our president and founder. He is a CPA, and he founded our organization about 17 years ago to take take advantage of the EITC tax credits through businesses, and was really the front runner in pushing the special purpose entity program. He was also the front runner in figuring out that people that work for nonprofits, retirees, as long as they have a state liability of $3,500 or more, then they can take part in this SPE as long as they have one share of stock in any business that operates in the state of Pennsylvania. So that was pretty awesome. We, as Martha said, we work with about 400 schools across the state, every religious denomination that you can think of, ones that are not religious, everything from Montessori to Christian to Catholic to dance to Jewish to Hebrew. So we are definitely diverse. We are very unique in that. We are the second largest organization in the state for EITC tax credits.
Great, thank you, Tammy. Is there anything else that you would share about this year, particularly for tax credit programs and what that looks like, or questions that you've gotten a lot that maybe people might be wondering themselves?
Sure. The biggest question is, when do I send the check? That is probably the number one question I get. As Martha will tell you, I only want the joinders. That's all you need. It's simply like a reservation, like you would do Expedia. So you would book your room on Expedia, and it would just be a reservation. They don't take your money right away. That is exactly what this program looks like. I accept your joinder as a reservation for your credits. Martha stated it perfectly. We are waiting for our letters from the state. There's a rumor that they should be coming out by the end of this week, but I usually take all of those rumors with a grain of salt, so I'm hoping by the end of September. I give the donors roughly between 40 and 50 days in order to, we have 60 days to complete our award letters. I give the donors somewhere between 6 weeks in order to do that, so that I have those last 2 weeks to make sure all the checks are here, they're clear, everybody sent the checks that we were anticipating, or that they were the same amount that we were anticipating. As Martha said, 2-year commitment of the same amount is what we ask every year. My suggestion is always to go a little under your liability, unless you're anticipating you get a huge raise this year, or you're anticipating every year getting a huge bonus. If your liability is $6,000, I always suggest going about $5,500, just in case, so for any kind of fluctuation that you may have, if you are off work for a couple weeks or something like that. You send a joinder in. It's not a legal binding document, a joinder agreement. If you send me a joinder agreement today that says $7,500, and you speak to your tax professional and they're like, no, $6,000, then we change your joinder around for the $6,000. Whatever you send your check for, that's what you're committing to. So if you give me a joinder for $7,500 and we decide that you can't do that and you can only do $6,000, and you send me a check for $6,000, that's where you're stuck for the next 2 years, so to speak. And then we can adjust in the third year. It is a 2-year commitment, but I will assume that you're committing for life until you tell me otherwise. Change it this year. We're definitely doing that, particularly this year because of COVID, up and down. Some people are having a better year than others. Some people are not having a great year. Jay, I can email you joinder, your original joinder, and you can just update it for me. And then when I send the check request out, we'll send it for your new amount. Sure. Well, congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
That's awesome. But what we can do, Jay, is next year in the summer, I'll probably send you a letter just asking where you think you might be. And then we can talk to your tax professional at that point. It'll be the same time about next year where we're writing checks. If you don't have the liability, then we'll adjust. We can adjust anything we need to up until check writing time, because you're grandfathered in. So I get to work with you a little bit more with a little bit more flexibility than with the new donors. check, I send an email saying I received your check. So if you send it to me by October 15th, if there's an email on your Joinder agreement, I email you and say check received. We start processing K-1s in February. You'll receive a K-1 that you use for on your tax return. That will show you'll have 2 different K-1s. One will be your federal K-1 that'll have your 10% that you can use for your charitable donation deduction. And then you'll have an RK-1, which is your state K-1 that you'll use on your state taxes in order to get your 90%. So if you have a $10,000 contribution, you'll have your first K-1 will show 1,000, your second K-1 will show 9,000 for a total of 10. That $9,000 K-1 you'll put on your state taxes. Then you turn in your taxes like everybody else by April 15th in a normal year, not a COVID year, in a normal year, April 15th. And then the state takes their sweet time and they start processing that stuff July 15th, right around July 1st, July 15th. And then the refund shows up right about now. Most of our refunds, I think, Martha, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think people started really getting them about September of last year.
Last year it took a while. So
yes. It always takes a while.
But a lot of our donors mentioned that they also, in addition to their refund, they also got interest back.
Yes. So we've only heard from a few people that have received refunds as of yet, but that people don't. My 20 donors per SB, they don't call me every time they receive their refunds, but it takes roughly about from check writing time to about a year until you receive your refund. Most people receive it right before check writing time. They add their 10% back on, and then they just recycle that money every year.
Okay. And then another question for you too. Like Jay, I don't have a date, but I could be retiring as early as next year, and I would have no idea what my liability is next year. Would I be grandfathered because I've done it for a year, or?
Yeah. Yep. As soon as you write your check for this year, next year, you're grandfathered, and you're one of my, what we call here, original donors. As Martha will tell you, your original donors get special treatment. You guys get first come, first serve for increases, decreases, anything like that. Any changes, you guys get first dibs. So you would get first dibs on any changes. So let's say, you retire and something happens, you win the lottery and you have like a massive liability. Right. We could take that massive liability for 1 year and then you could go back to $3,500, whatever you want to do. But it's the same thing with Jay. Talk to your tax professional. We will work out your numbers.
Okay, but what happens if I'm like I do nothing next year? Then I'll have no Pennsylvania tax liability.
Okay. We won't penalize you because you retired. You're all fancy pantsed and retired. So we won't penalize you for that at all. We'll just thank you for your participation for the year and congratulate you on your retirement.
Oh, okay. All right. So there's no risk.
Nope.
Once I've done it.
None whatsoever.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
You're welcome.
There we go.
Only the Joinder agreement, where does that come from?
Oh, I can send you one if you're ready to sign up.
Well, I think I'll talk to the tax people, but yeah, I'd appreciate getting one. Thank you.
Sure, I can email you that. Great. That's exciting to hear. Tammy, I think you can.
What I can do, Jay, is when you send your check in this year, I'll send you a receipt for the check. Most companies will count this as a charitable contribution and will match it.
Awesome.
Tammy, that's great to hear because I think we've gotten that kind of question before, and I don't think we were sure how to answer that. So you're saying that if they make a contribution, it can be considered a matching opportunity for their company?
It can. It depends on the company. Some companies will accept it, some companies won't. But if you have a donor that does that, just have them let me know. They can either write me a note when they send their check that they need a receipt. It's a very informal receipt. It's very similar to what you would send to the state. It's just very informal, just stating that this is the amount of the check, you know, it was sent to me, when it was sent, and they can give that to their employer. A lot of times the employer they will call me and confirm it. And then it takes a long time. Jay can probably tell you, it takes a long time for matching gifts to happen, usually roughly a year, but it's worth it because it's not much work on my part. It's not much work on Jay's part. It's just cutting all the red tape with the business. So I'm happy to do it. I do it for a lot of other donors who have really, I would say probably like 15 or 20, which is a lot. I mean, in comparison, I guess, in the whole grand scheme of things, but I think there's about 20 people that do the matching gift.
That's great. That's, you know, another opportunity to take advantage of. You know, again, it's not money out of your pocket, so why not multiply it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, thank you again, everyone. Really great to have you join us today, and appreciate your time, and especially for Mandisa for sharing more about our graduate support work. And yes, hopefully everyone's staying safe and healthy.